Mr. Chairman. Yes.
We'll call the Town Plan and Zoning Commission regular meeting of April 25th to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary, please read the roll.
Chairman Aida,
Here.
Commissioner Camillo,
Here.
Commissioner Claffey, Commissioner Fox,
Here.
Commissioner Payne,
Here.
Commissioner Sobieski,
Here.
Commissioner Woods,
Here.
Commissioner Batalica, Commissioner Braverman,
Here.
Commissioner Giangrave.
We'll have the alternate Commissioner Braverman sit in for Commissioner Claffey. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. We'll turn it over to the planner.
I have a couple of items that I recommend we remove from the agenda. Item 9A, which is petition 12-18, site plan modification at 49 Fenn Road. The applicant asked that it be taken off the agenda for now. It's not ready for action. They just received engineering comments today, and it was literally a 4-page list of engineering comments. So they'll be back before you at the next meeting. I also recommend you delete item 9B, which
No. See.
9C, which is a staff proposed text amendment regarding kennels. The chairman has suggested we put that on hold for the time being, so I recommend you delete that. I'm also recommending that you consider moving item, new business item 9B, the site plan approval for the library parking lot, which is currently item 9B, which is quite a ways down on the agenda. The applicants have asked if the commission would consider moving them up. They've been here since 5 o'clock, and so I suggest that that item be moved to after public participation, but before the executive session item. All right, and if there are any other suggestions of changes to the order of the agenda? All right, I guess not. Okay, just those 3 things, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Is there any comments on the agenda changes that the planner has just outlined? Okay. Seeing none, can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll go right into the petition 07-18, site plan approval for the library. You want to read the whole petition? It's on the second page. It's item B under new business.
Petition 07-18, site plan approval at 2226 Mazzucchelli Way, Lee Robin Wells Library, Inc. Owner, David Langdon, 131 Cedar Street, Newington, Connecticut. Applicant contact.
The applicant here, or his representative, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and make the presentation.
My name is Dave Langdon, Facilities Director for the town of Newington, 131 Cedar Street. What else do you need?
Just make the presentation.
Great.
To- For the record, just state who your name and who you work for, so that the secretary gets it on record.
Good evening, my name is Tom Arcari. I'm a principal with Quisenberry Arcari Architects. I represent, my address is 195 Scott Swamp Road, Farmington.
Chairman, could you just take one of the microphones and talk into it? Not for us, but for the TV.
Understood.
Thank you.
Again, good evening, my name is Tom Arcari. I'm principal with Quisenberry Arcari Malik. We're architects at 195 Scott Swamp Road in Farmington, Connecticut. I have with me this evening Michael Erickson from Diversified Technologies Corporation. He's our site civil engineer. We represent the town of Newington in its overall presentation. This is a portion of the overall municipal complex plan. We are, as a part of our project, we are proposing a new parking lot and dedicated access to Lucy Robbins Wells Library. This is directly to the east of Mazzicoli Way and directly south to the Lucy Robbins Wells Library. The project proposes leaving the portion of the existing Garfield parking lot along Garfield Street, providing a new access drive in a north-south orientation with parking, and then a dedicated drop-off loop directly to the south of the library with handicap accessible parking spaces and handicap accessible path to the library entrance. Library entrance will stay in its existing configuration. As a part of this plan, we're making accommodations for secondary access onto Mazzicoli Way. We're improving the sidewalks along Mazzicoli Way and regrading the entire area from the back of Lucy Robbins Library all the way down to the bottom of the site. That will allow flush access, full accessible access at the back of the building. We are proposing, as a part of the plan, a buffer, a new planted buffer, to provide a full buffer to the neighbors to the east. And as a part of the project, we will have some bioswale and drainage areas. The reason we're here before you this evening is that the remainder of our project falls under the jurisdiction of our prior 8-24 approval, and we are working with town staff on the design and comments of that space. But this parcel, this parcel here and this parcel here are owned by the Board of Trustees, the library, and as a result, the work that we're doing on this parcel requires formal submission to you. Our team, working through Mike, has had informal meetings with Mr. Minor and the town engineer to review the plan. We've received comments from both, and we are in the process of incorporating their, what I would say is short list of comments. But I'll turn it over to Mike to talk about the particulars regarding the site layout and drainage.
Sure, thank you. Again, Michael Erickson with Diversified Technology Consultants, 2321 Whitney Avenue in Hamden. We're trying to reuse some of the infrastructure that's here, but also implement LID to the extent possible. So for the new paved areas, we're adding bioswales at this location, and in this island. They're designed to work offline, where they'll have a curb cut, accept rainwater, and knowing the soils that we have here in Newington are kind of tight and don't receive water particularly well, they're also under drained. So they'll get treatment through the soil media and uptake through the plantings in the bioswales, but are equipped with an under drain. In heavier storm events, when the bioswales are filled exceeding the water quality volume, there's also going to be a catch basin nearby as a bypass. That'll also alleviate concerns for the inlets getting blocked in the bioswales with ice, snow, so on and so forth. Some of the particular comments, one I want to address because it came out earlier from Mr. Minor regarding the buffer. This graphic shows our intent to expand that as you suggested. And on the revised set of plans, we're also going to have the snow storage areas that we talked about. We're also equipping this with LED lighting, not retrofits, they're actual native LED lights mounted at 15-foot height with the optics situated so that we don't encroach on the neighbors, and photometrics were provided with the application.
Can you show where the snow storage roughly is?
In this particular area, and then we're showing some here, here, and then we have some area in here.
That address all the engineering questions?
Well, no, he hasn't gotten to the engineering questions because I think you just got the engineer's comments today.
I did, yes.
Right. No, he just spoke to the comments that I had in my report to him of a couple of weeks ago.
What were some of the comments from the engineer?
I believe he just wants more data on the drainage design to make sure that, in fact, the structures that are proposed will accommodate the amount of water that's expected.
I quickly looked through them with the limited time I had, and I concur, that's the intent.
Any commissioner remarks at this time or questions for the applicant? Commissioner Woods.
Just one, is the traffic flow going to be one way in from Garfield Street and you have to loop up and around to come back down, or is it two-way?
No.
So just the half circle is one way?
Just the half circle is one way. Both entrances from Garfield and Mazzacoli are two-way.
And the distance between the spaces is 24 feet? Is that what you have?
Yes.
No? 24 feet?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Payne.
Yeah. Do we have cross easements in place between the library property and the town of Newington property?
We're in the process right now, and one of the steps, if you will, is to go through the TPZ process to show that we have a viable design and project moving forward.
Okay, the next question I have is, as you're well aware, there's a library board that's been in place for over 2 years. Did they give you any insight on where their future building is, and what did you do in your new design to mitigate any damages to the design for the future?
Great question. So we did speak at length with the library board, and they had two different directions where they could do their addition. One would be directly off the rear of the building, and one would be potentially in an L in this configuration of the building. So what we did is we actually configured this loop so that this is a much deeper loop, so that this portion of the parking area could be removed in the future to accommodate the new addition, but this could remain and become the future loop and entrance path. So realistically, all of this would be, or 90% of this would be preserved in the future. We could just pull everything back to this point, but we really want to try and get the accessible parking and the drop-off as close to the building as possible. So we see this as really the most financially responsible approach at this time, and limits the amount that would have to be revised in the future.
Okay, thank you. Also, on the existing parking, right now, the town has probably close to 80 parking spaces on their own property. And then I add up about 74 on your new plan, not counting the parking over here on the side. Am I accurate? And is there a reason why you're getting rid of all the existing, or 60% of the existing parking, and going with this different design? Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, well, one, we wanted to build new infrastructure that would last, basically be, 30-year infrastructure. The existing infrastructure's been there for a while. However, it's a good question. We are currently looking at an option that would allow us to save more of that parking space as a second bid alternate. So essentially, build from here up and save those parking spaces. It would yield the same number of total spaces and would potentially save some dollars to the community. However, it requires, by doing it in this configuration, we can regrade the site in a way that's overall a little more favorable and allows us to collect the storm drainage in a better way.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? You all set with your presentation?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, I think this might be ready to move forward. It's up to you to make a decision whether to act on it tonight or move it to the next meeting for action and discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we,
I have a draft motion ready for you if you want.
I make a motion that we move petition 0718 to old business for action for tonight.
Second.
Okay, any questions, any comments on the motion?
Can I
Yep.
comment at this
Yes,
point?
go ahead.
I just, at this point, I wanted to say, we took no exception to the staff comments we received, and as a part of your motion, it's our intention to incorporate
Part of
those
the
or work
conditions.
with the staff.
It'll be part of the conditions of the motion anyway.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All in favor of moving this to old business?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll be acting on it under old business, item C. Next item on the agenda is executive session on a lawsuit that,
Mr. Chairman, did you mean to skip over public participation?
it's not on,
It's after the executive.
it's after executive session.
Okay.
We'll take a couple of minutes, we'll move next door. We'll try to be as fast as we can. We know there's other people here on items on the agenda, but we have to meet with our attorney. Okay, could I get a motion to go into executive session?
Make a motion, go into executive session.
Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll be back as soon as possible. Hold their bladder for 2 seconds. Okay, we're back from executive session. No votes were taken in the executive session. Can I get a motion to return to our regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next item on the agenda is public participation. Anyone wishing to speak at this time, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, zoning enforcement officers report.
I think that's there by mistake. We usually only have the CEO make his report at the first meeting of the month, so he can give you the report. I think that popped in there automatically, so we can delete that.
Remarks by commissioners at this time? Any remarks? Okay, seeing none, we're going to the public hearing portion of the agenda. Do you have the rules for the rules for the public hearing? Okay.
I think you skipped over public participation.
No, I didn't. I asked for it. Oh, you did? Okay.
Thanks. No, I'll take it. It's easier than looking on the picture.
We're going into public hearings. We'll have the secretary read the procedure which we follow for public hearings. There's a couple on here that we have to continue and some new ones. Please proceed.
The order of proceedings at a public hearing shall be as follows. A, convening by a chairman. B, reading of the notice by the commission secretary or a commissioner designated by the chairman to act in his stead. C, identification and location of the property involved by the town planner. D, a statement of the issue to be considered by the chairman or the town planner. E, presentation by the applicant limited to 20 minutes unless a specific extension is granted by the chair. F, persons wishing to speak in favor of the application limited to 2 minutes per person. G, persons wishing to speak in opposition to the application limited to 3 minutes per person. H, rebuttal by the applicant limited to 5 minutes total. I, rebuttal by the opposition limited to 5 minutes total. During a public hearing, it shall be within the discretion of the chairman whether the time limitation should be varied slightly, provided the commission consents to any such variance. In no case shall the extension be for more than 20% of the allotment indicated above, or 1 minute, whichever is greater.
Please read petition 05-18.
Petition 05-18, special permit, section 3.15.3, outside restaurant seating at 3260 Berlin Turnpike, Plaza Esteca Restaurant. John Kennelly, applicant, Cleveland, Newington LLC, owner, Manuel Rubio, 3260 Berlin Turnpike, Newington, Connecticut, contact. Continued from April 11, 2018, deadline to close, public hearing, May 1st, 2018.
Okay, I see the applicant's attorney is here. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. This is the third meeting on this hearing. You have specific, there's specific questions that you were going to answer pertaining to the police and fire marshal. So if you could, I don't want to rehear the thing again through the whole
Chairman, I'm
process.
surprised. You don't want to hear my whole presentation again? You weren't so riveted by it the first two times? Well, I'll just accept it. I will not reiterate my presentation. You know the security procedures that we have proposed, the increased infrastructure, the increased manpower. You understand the single entrance and exits. We've all seen this. We've all discussed this. We've had many discussions about it. And I thank you very much for your patience of the last two prior hearings. I'm here before you today on behalf of a corporate resident of your town that has one of its most important days of its year, one of the most economically important days of its year. And we come to you looking for your support, looking for your approval so that it can continue to be an important place of gathering for people in Newington and the surrounding towns, and that it can be a successful and contributor to the success of this town. As to your specific questions, one is has the chief of police willing to participate after my offer of putting in bond putting up an $8,000 bond ahead of time for the provision of police officers during the day of the event? The answer is no. Additionally, the fire marshal, Chris, is not willing to participate actively, even though I offered a similar situation with a bond for any participation by fire marshal, any member of the Newington Volunteer Fire Department in their official capacity to maintain attendance. Without police attendance, he was unwilling to do so.
How about the parking? There was a question on parking. You want to address that, or you want to just?
I thought I had addressed the issues of parking. The landlord, obviously, Cleveland is a kind of sponsor of this application. I had reported on the names, the specific names and contact information for abutters such as Lowe's and IHOP. They had all agreed to, had no problem with our plan. We had met and discussed it with them. The parking, I knew there were some questions, but each of the questions and each of the issues that I have heard in my prior two presentations were questions about parking that were issues of the past. We believe that our presentation, or my presentation, did address those, certainly most significantly with the lessors, the people like Lowe's and IHOP actively supporting this, and our provision of additional private security forces in those areas to ensure that the agreements and how the division of the parking was going to be, had been proposed, would be enforced.
Okay. Any commissioner comments or remarks or questions for the attorney? Commissioner Woods.
I think I remember you saying last time you were trying to make arrangements for off-site parking and shuttling. Is Were you successful in that, or?
No, we were concerned with trying to do shuttling. I was concerned, let me put it this way. I was concerned doing shuttling and additional liability and additional insurance and getting insured for any additional distance or satellite parking. It didn't seem to be a fix that was going to address your concerns, while at the other time would create more moving parts, which would, in my opinion, potentially create more issues.
Okay, so there's no shuttling.
No shuttling, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner remarks? Commissioner Sobieski.
Yes, last year, I believe they had one incident up there with the police department, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Commissioner Sobieski, to be specific, there was one incident where a person wouldn't leave our premises and we asked the police to remove them. I believe that information came through Town Planner Minor regarding the report, the post-event report by the police department.
What I'm concerned with is if you tied up the 1 or 2 districts up there to handle issues, it's going to leave the rest of the town not covered as well. All right, that's my concern up there. My other concern is the fact that there's nobody going to be monitoring how many people we have in and out of this place, like the fire marshal. So therefore, it's been in the past couple, and maybe the chairman or the vice chairman can help me out here. Last couple of times, if I'm not mistaken, you oversold the tickets on several occasions. And I believe both occasions resulted in the place being closed by the fire marshal. So I have a real concern with that. There's no control over this. I mean, now maybe their recollection is a little better than mine, but that's a big concern to me. And again, with the activity and the way it was situated last year, with people with fences, and we had a person here with security, and this is what we're gonna do. We still had issues with it. And then also, I seem to have seen somebody email me something that your poster now says 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. Is that correct?
I don't know the specifics of the poster, but I will say that the liquor license issued by the Department of Consumer Protection Liquor Control Division on a Saturday night. This is a Saturday event. This is Cinco de Mayo, which falls on a Saturday this year, and therefore it is legal to sell alcohol on a Saturday between the hours of 9 a.m. and 2 a.m. So just to be clear, the restaurant is advertising sale of alcohol during its normal hours for a Saturday. Those are the hours that it's open on every other Saturday of the year.
And one more thing, what is your anticipated patronage going to be there? How many people do you anticipate to be there? I mean, if you're going to have a capacity inside or outside the building? And how, and I know you said you're going to have counters and stuff like that. My concern is people, that number's not balancing from one door to the other. And that was my concern last time, still is.
Mr. Chairman, if I may respond to Commissioner Sobieski's points in the order they were presented?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Sobieski, your first point was that the fire marshal, you were concerned that a fire marshal wouldn't be there monitoring the situation. In no years prior had there been a fire marshal there monitoring the situation. That was something I wanted to induce for this year to give more peace of mind to this commission, to be quite honest. It was an expense, which wouldn't be a small one, which I had to convince my client to incur so that there would be what I thought would be another layer of comfort by this commission. But we hadn't had one, and one hadn't been required pursuant to the terms and conditions of the special permit in years past. That's point one. You were concerned about it being overcrowded, and that's certainly a concern, and I thought I had addressed that to a good degree or a large degree in the map that I presented my first day of presentation, which showed only one entrance to the outside. And when you'd mentioned fencing, the fencing we used last year was orange snow fencing we have purchased actual metal chain link fencing. I believe there was concern about people just pushing those down and getting over them. Well, we have purchased, not leased or rented, but purchased proper equipment so that won't occur again. So there was the idea of overcrowding. There was some testimony earlier, discussion. Last year, the overcrowding didn't occur on the outside because it was kind of a crappy day. That wasn't the problem. The outside actually didn't have that many people. What happened was that everybody, because it wasn't that most wonderful of a day, was crowding into the interior. And under the flow, how it occurred last time, you could get from the outside to the inside, right? That is actually not, the design we have now is you have an outside portion with one entrance and two exits. If you remember, the exit was down by the backside near the IHOP, and that isn't an entrance. You'd have one entrance to the inside, to the main exterior venue, and one entrance to the interior venue. I believe the overcrowding occurred last year and was due to allowing those two areas to intermix, and I've addressed that through my security or the layout plan that's been presented to this commission. You questioned whether in the past the fire marshal had ever closed it down. That did not in fact occur. What happened is the fire marshal did come, Chris, I believe it was in those days also, did show up and had people exit the interior of the building, but he didn't close it. He said that the capacity, and it was the amended capacity, in which for special events you can be allowed for the single event to remove tables and chairs and like that, and then get a higher body count inside the building. But even with that, Chris didn't like how many people were in there. He said, that room has to leave, basically, and emptied out much of the room and broke it up. That happened. He went up there one occasion. I've talked to him a number of times about last year, in the last month and a half or 2 months. But he didn't actually close the event. He didn't end or terminate the event, from what he told me in the phone. I think you talked about police coverage. I will call your attention to the fact that the Newington Police Department's report or post-event report mentioned one event, one thing that happened there, and we were asking them to get somebody off our property. I don't believe, there's been a lot of discussion of Lowe's parking being messed up. There's been a lot of discussion of, trash in the area, people parking at the DOT area and leaving trash there. And I'll agree, some things weren't done as well as we'd like, and I wish the guests were more respectful. However, there has been no evidence, no testimony, no emails about this causing any sort of a significant taxation of the police, the Newington Police Department, on any of the years in the past. I haven't heard that from anybody. I've talked to the police chief 5, 6 times about this, and his issue to me every time is, your guys were late paying the bill. It's not you, John. I just did it to something on fire, pit on fire. Somebody else wanted police. He won't give it to them. Some roadwork people didn't pay him on time. He's not giving them coverage for their construction. I just want to be very clear. I know that people's memories can get clouded. There was no taxation or extra effort needed or extra deployment needed by the Newington Police Department for any of these events that have occurred in the past pursuant to special permit.
Commissioner Camillo.
2 years before, that was when all the parking lots were full. And you couldn't get in to Lowe's.
I'm doing pretty well, though, aren't I? The mic?
Yeah.
I'm in the mic here. And
Closer, Michael.
now we're not gonna have police, you're not gonna have any help from the fire department. What are you gonna do to protect the Newington residents from the crowds?
Well, we certainly will look to protect the Newington residents and, most importantly, all attendees of the event and anyone who is using any of the other facilities in the area that are impacted. I had my first presentation, I showed the stationing of, when you approved this last year, you approved 24 private security officers. The number right now is 30. And I'd be willing to go to 34, 37, 40. Probably not much more than that, because then now it becomes not worth doing, to be quite honest. But we've increased by a quarter the presence of it. We also, as I said, have the infrastructure of it is more significant, so that we keep people in the areas they've gone into and they want to be in, and they'll stay in those areas. And we're not having multiple entrances. There's a single access point. There's multiple exits. Don't get me wrong. We're not keeping people in a dangerous situation where they don't have ways to get out. but people can't get in. And that's really how the make or break of this situation will be. And that will be having counts at the 2 entrances. Anybody that wants to leave can leave. But if you want to come in, there's only so many allowed.
Any other commissioner remarks? Commissioner Payne?
I was wondering if you could clear up. So last year, the amended capacity on the inside was X amount, what that was, and then what was the capacity outside? And I think the commission put a limit on how many people could be there total, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember.
I don't, Commissioner, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No, go
ahead.
Go right ahead.
It makes sense. I don't remember it exactly, Commissioner, through you, Mr. Chairman, but in that the design at that time allowed both to go from one to the other, that would make sense to me.
So
That you had a total capacity.
So today, you're not doing an amended capacity on the inside because of the fire marshal. What is your regular capacity level on the inside that's posted, that's every day that you can use? That's not changing. What is that capacity?
I believe that's on my application. I don't have the application in front of me.
And then, are you proposing X amount for the outside area? Are you asking for a certain amount of people on the outside area?
Commissioner, through you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Payne, no, not a total capacity, but I was planning to and hoping to work with the town on that issue with a number that the town would be comfortable with. And let's be clear, one of the things that you'd think about is not only the square footage of parking.
Yes. How many do we have on-site of parking available? And that kind of sets your capacity level.
As we both, through you, Mr. Chairman, as we both know how planning and zoning and development rules go, if you got no parking, it's tough to build a lot and, tough to have a big space. I didn't want to have some number that we make up, right? Without being in consultation and discussion with the commission, to be quite honest.
Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner Payne.
Any other commissioner comments at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'll open it up to the public and then we'll make some determinations. This is a public hearing. We'll ask that anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, anyone in opposition to this application, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I received a letter, looks like it's opposing. May I read it?
Yes, you may. Read it into the record and then give the
Yep,
letter
I'll
to
be
the
reading this into the
secretary.
record, Mr. Minor. Town Plan and Zoning Commission meeting 4/25/18. Good evening, Chairman Aida, Commissioners and staff. My name is Robert F. Serra Sr., and I reside at 237 Reservoir Road, and I was hoping to be at this meeting in person tonight, but unfortunately I cannot attend, so I have asked Commissioner Fox to have this letter read into the record tonight. I am writing this letter in strong opposition to the TP&Z granting Plaza Azteca a permit for the Cinco de Mayo event. As most of you know, I sat on this commission for 4 years, and I am very familiar with this establishment's track record with this event. This applicant has been told on numerous occasions that they had to apply for this permit by a certain date, and again this year they came in at the 11th hour and expect this commission to just grant them the application. This is just one of the issues I have with this application. The manager came in last year for the same application and brought with him a security expert who touted his attributes and how he was to handle security, and that there would be no repeat of the events of the past. The commission took a chance and gave Plaza Azteca their permit with a strong message that if this event caused any problems like they had in the past, that their permit would be revoked, and we all know how that turned out. The fire marshal shut it down, and the police department were called in also. Although I have not been to any recent meetings, I have been keeping up with the meetings through TV and by reading the minutes of the meetings, which lead me to my next point. From my understanding, both Chief Schroeder and Chief Clark are against this permit and not willing to sign off on it. Take that combined with Plaza Azteca's track record for this event and the fact that despite previous deadlines given to apply for this permit and their blatant disregard for said deadlines, I feel that at this time this permit should be denied. There was a large safety factor involved here, not only for the patrons and employees of Plaza Azteca, but also for the innocent people shopping in that area, for drivers that may be on their way home from or going to work or out to dinner. I say this because if they cannot control the crowd, and they have proven that they cannot control the crowd, I have to wonder how they control the amount of alcohol the customers are consuming. I do feel that in the future, with proper planning and coming to TP&Z in the proper time frame and listening to the advice and concerns of the Commission, that Plaza Azteca could have a safe and successful event in the future. But until that time, I urge you all to vote no to this application. This event is a safety risk and should not be permitted. Thank you, Commissioners and staff, for your time. Robert F. Sarah, Sr.
Anyone else in opposition? Seeing none, I'll ask the attorney if he would like to rebut anything that was said. And
Mr. Chairman, I would, in fact. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, that letter was full, had many opinions in it. There was statements made that the event last year specifically, that they couldn't control the crowd and that there were problems caused, and that there was safety factors and that he worried about the innocent people on the street. I'm afraid I just have seen no evidence, none, from talking to the police chief, from hearing about the police chief's immediate report after the event, from discussions with others, with discussions before this commission. I just have never heard any objective support for a failure to control a crowd. The only thing I ever heard is that it was pretty empty outside because the weather was bad. I didn't hear anything about innocent people driving on the turnpike being at risk. I just didn't. There were no alcohol incidents at this event. Nothing by the police, no arrests for DUI, and trust me, I represent a lot of restaurants. One of the questions they look to is, where were you drinking? And the Department of Consumer Protection often follows up with that. I will tell you, there were no incidents where, at least where it was documented, where someone, I don't know if it happened or not, but there is no evidence to that effect. There's a lot of opinions in that letter, and I'm sure that commissioner served honorably and well and volunteered here on this commission. But it offers really nothing but broadsides. And in fact, positions that aren't supported by the evidence. They're not. And if anybody can cite to where the innocent people were in danger, safety factors were ignored, or the crowds were not controlled, we've all been together for 3 nights and I haven't heard any of that. In fact, I would ask the town planner, Mr. Minor, to read again into the record the email from the police detective, the police chief, immediately following last year's event, where he memorializes one incident. There seems to be just tons of recollections and tons of opinions regarding crowds and things being out of control and things getting closed down. I will tell you, the Fire Marshal, Chris, certainly didn't say to me he ever closed it down. He said he threw some people out. And I've talked to him, as I said, maybe 4 or 5 times about all of this.
I'm going to have to dig around for it. In fact, I need to leave my spot and go back to the office to get it.
Mr. Chairman, I'll withdraw my request. Okay. I think we all have an independent recollection of when both the fire marshal and the police chief's immediate after incident emails were read into the record by the planner minor. In the police chief's statement being that there was one arrest for, I think it was trespass.
I believe that's the case. You're correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then I withdraw my request to have that read into the record again as being duplicative. Commissioners, I respectfully will be very short. You've listened to me prattle on enough in the last couple of months. And let's just be clear, I've been coming here for a couple of months now. This hasn't been the 11th hour. We're not making the application today or 3 days ago and appearing before you. We didn't, we actually, my clients were so eager, they took a photo of the public notice and they sent it in. And we actually hadn't even been put on the calendar yet. And the planner said, you have to take it down, you have to take it down. You got to have a hearing date first before you can do a public notice. And so I do take exception also to the idea that we are somehow here at the 11th hour. We are not. I've spent the end of winter and beginning of spring with you young gentlemen, so I do think we have been diligent. I have spoken to officials of the city many times, and I do think we have prosecuted this application in a timely and effective manner. And for my last thing, I will remind, the only reason the Newington Police Department isn't playing a stronger and more real role in this is we were late paying a bill. Thank you.
Okay.
Jim?
Oh. Yeah, sorry, Commissioner Payne.
I just wanted, the planner gave me some information related to last year, and I wanted to share it with the commissioners so everybody had the same information. Indoor last year, which was a special modification of the indoor capacity, was at 300 people. And the outside was at 400 people. Now, I would assume that you're indoor, you're leaving all the furniture inside, so your capacity can't be 300 as of today. I don't know what your capacity level is.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Commissioner Payne, our capacity would be on the day of the event the same as it is every other day, because no, we didn't even apply for the special. I told my clients, don't even bother.
So
The furniture in there, the occupancy is probably in half, probably 150 people.
Yeah.
Off of the top of my head, I was thinking it was 164, but I'm not positive about that.
Okay.
Okay. So the capacity is going to be reduced almost in half on the interior, and the last year was 400 on the outside. So it might be possible to set a number at a reduced rate less than 400, where there still is plenty of parking on site, and with less people, there'll be less impact. Just want to give that information to the commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, and through you to the commissioners, as the applicant, I will say to you now, I'll be more than happy for you to select a reasonable but a significant reduction on the capacity on the inside is dictated now. It's the same capacity we always are. And as I said, I believe it's 164. But certainly am more than open to a reasonable but significant reduction in outdoor capacity.
Hang on, changing the tape. Okay. Okay, with that, you're all set with your presentation and your comments.
Just before I go, Chairman, Commissioners, Planner, and staff, well, not hi, he's Commissioner tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening to me, for engaging with me, for having some great questions that made me think and make this a better application. But I appreciate your time and your volunteering here on behalf of Town of Newington.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner remarks at this time? Anything to add to the record? What is the pleasure of the commission? Do we have to, I believe we have to act on this tonight because the next meeting is beyond the date of the event. Commissioner,
Well, in that case, Mr. Chairman, I would move that we close the public hearing and move it to old business for deliberation and voting tonight.
Second.
motion made and second. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're moving that to item D under old business. The Secretary, please read petition 0818. And I'm gonna have, before you do that, I have a question for the planner in relationship to this application. We have, following this 0818, we have 0918, which is a special permit. can we take these together, or do we have to take them individually?
I recommend you do them individually because the issues are different.
Okay, just for the record, we'll be looking at that. Is the applicant here?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, please.
Don
state-
Kelly for the applicant, Seva Sedan LLC. And my address, Mr. Chairman, is 293 Maple Hill Avenue, Newington, Connecticut, 06111.
He hasn't read it.
Okay, we're going to have the secretary read the 0818 into the record.
Petition 08-18, zoning text amendment, section 6.16.3, medical marijuana dispensary. Seva Sedan LLC, applicant John M. Kelly, 66 Cedar Street, Suite 208, Newington, Connecticut, contact.
Okay, like I said, this is a one part of a dual application. The second one is a special permit. So go ahead, John.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, staff, good evening. Tonight, we have come for this zoning text change, proposed amendment to your regulations. And it has to do with the issue of medical marijuana. And the application later is a request for dispensary, but the text change that we're proposing for the commission is to consider additional locations in town, one particular location, section of town on the Berlin Turnpike, where the medical marijuana dispensary locations can be allowed. As I'm sure the commission is well aware, in 2012, the Connecticut General Assembly adopted a statute allowing for medical marijuana production facilities and dispensary facilities to be permitted within the state of Connecticut. And that was after many, many years of debate at the General Assembly. And that bill passed and the governor signed it, but it was with many, many strict provisions. And the statute ordered the Department of Consumer Protection to adopt regulations to make sure that medical marijuana was only available for those who truly needed it. You'd have to get certification from a doctor, and there were the Department of Consumer Protection was directed to speak to doctors and healthcare professionals and make sure that certain ailments that medical marijuana could benefit in serious illnesses, things like cancer and other serious pain issues, certain ailments would be permitted to be for use of medical marijuana. And also, it strictly limited who could write prescriptions for medical marijuana, and also ultimately who could produce medical marijuana in production facilities. And a production facility is where the marijuana is grown and developed. And that's contrasted with a dispensary facility where which is more like a pharmacy type arrangement, where once the medical marijuana is produced and it's put into whether it be pill or other form, and whatever the form is, it's sold dispensary at a dispensary location. And of course, the Department of Consumer Protection was directed to establish all kinds of regulations for who could produce medical marijuana and what kind of facilities, and also what kind of individuals or businesses could sell medical marijuana. And soon thereafter, this commission, and many of you were on the commission at that time, reviewed the rules and regulations of the Department of Consumer Protection as they were presented to the towns to adopt zoning regulations. And in early 2014, this commission spent many, many hours, I'm sure many of you remember, and even those that weren't on the commission remember this commission working very hard to go through the rules and regulations set down by the Department of Consumer Protection to see how it would, whether it would be permitted here in Newington. And after several public hearings in early 2014, and certainly the commissioners had many important points and many ideas for what should be allowed and how it should be allowed in terms of commissioners' review of the consumer protection regulations. But one of the things that, as going through the minutes of those meetings in early 2014, what struck a number of the commissioners in their comments, commission comments, was how there really wasn't a lot of public involvement in the process, in the hearings. There were some letters and that sent some persons commented more about the general issue of legalization of marijuana, which that's not what this is. That's not ever what it was. It was all for medical uses, again, for severe illnesses and ailments as a way to help these kind of patients who might benefit. But the commission did finally, after working with the, reviewing the regulations of the state and working with the town attorney, adopted regulations. In those regulations, this commission decided that both production facilities and dispensary facilities could only be located in parts of town that were previously zoned as an industrial zone. And the text change that we are proposing tonight would expand that a little bit, especially, but only for dispensary facilities, because the production of medical marijuana requires a lot more space, whereas the retail dispensary of it, for example, later on, if I get the opportunity to discuss the specific proposal, the space requested is about 600 square feet of store space to be able to dispense it. So we're simply asking that your current regulations be changed slightly to allow for the medical marijuana dispensary facilities to be allowed in the Berlin Turnpike business zone. Dispensary facilities only. And we think that, as we have had the medical marijuana legal in the state for a few years now, there are not a lot of dispensaries in the immediate area, but, there's definitely a need for this throughout the, not only the Newington community. There are people that would benefit from allowing this, but also Berlin, as we know, the Berlin Turnpike is an area of regional interest in terms of retail locations. Not that, the regulations of the state forbid this type of dispensary to be treated like some sort of regular retail location. The signage and where it may be located is highly regulated by the state, as with your regulations. But having it allowed in the Berlin Turnpike with the other regulations of the state and with your commission's regulations, I think we can continue to protect the citizens of the town while offering this to a wider area of locations within the town, particularly, as I mentioned, the Berlin Turnpike, and perhaps better serve people in our community and beyond the community who need this form of medication to make their lives a little better.
Mr. Planner, can you, for the public's information. Define the BT zone, the boundaries of this particular zone. It's only on the Berlin Turnpike. If the north, just roughly where the northern boundary is and the southern boundary, and what this zone encompasses. Just
Well,
for the
actually-
record, so the public gets an idea, it's not the Berlin Turnpike from Weathersfield to Berlin. It's only a portion, the northern portion of the Berlin Turnpike.
Right, the BBT zone extends from approximately where Cedar Street intersects with the Berlin Turnpike, from there south down to just past Ann Street and past Churchill Street on the west, Ann Street on the east. So
Churchill.
roughly the northern third of the Berlin Turnpike, and I'll see if I can find the zoning map quickly. No, it's not going to be quick, but while you're deliberating, let me find the zoning map.
It's basically from the Weathersfield town line to
Ann Street?
Ann Street, which is,
Churchill Drive.
Churchill Bridge, right?
yeah, into
Yeah.
Churchill Bridge entrance off the turnpike. So it's not the complete turnpike from Weathersfield to Berlin. So the public has an idea of what the zone encompasses. And it does, it follows the zone map between that particular zone and whatever's behind it. There's residence zones and there's some commercial zones behind it, off the turnpike. Okay, just so the record shows what the zone is, John. Go ahead.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. So, the later applications I indicated, this commission approved a medical offices building, and that's for the later petition, but we would, if the commission were to consider this zone change, it would be allowed in all the areas the chairman just described, but also, you know, the building that my client owns, which is a medical office building with several other medical uses located in the building.
And I need to correct something that I said in my memo, which is incorrect. I mentioned that because if this is approved, or that the amendment is approved, and the marijuana would be allowed in the BBT zone, and then by extension it would be allowed in the PD zone. That's not correct. Normally, anything that's allowed by special permit in the BT zone is also allowed in the PD zone. However, since medical marijuana is its own separate section in the zoning regulations, that doesn't apply. So if approved, medical marijuana dispensaries would only be allowed in the BBT zone and not also in the PD zone.
And
So
I would
it's
also,
more limited than I indicated in my report.
Yeah, that makes a difference.
and I would also draw the commission's attention to, you know, these were zones that were discussed in 2014, and the commission at the time decided to leave it to the industrial-only zone. But as we've seen, the experience, which has been, I think, largely favorable in other communities, that trying to perhaps open it up to other zones, particularly in light of some of the buildings that are available in those zones, which are not, you know, which allow for discrete areas where the medical marijuana dispensary can be offered. And again, it is only for the dispensaries, not for the production facilities, which I think, in reviewing the minutes of your commission in 2014, I know the production facilities were a major concern of the commission. But of course, at that time in 2014, you didn't have anywhere in the state production facilities or dispensary facilities. So now we have some experience, certainly with dispensary facilities I believe there's one in South Windsor, and I believe there's one in Hartford, so.
Okay. Any, is that it on this application? Okay, open up to commissioner remarks at this time. Anything? Mr. Planner? You have two reports. You have an initial report from April 18th. And we just got through with our packet basically another, it says April 18th. Apparently, it's at the same time that it's brought to our attention that there's some distance requirements.
Oh, that would apply to the next application, to the special permit application.
Okay.
That should be 09.
09, I'm sorry, okay. Any commissioner comments at this time? Nothing, seeing nothing, I'll open it up to the public for public input. Just sit down so they could sit down.
Yeah, go ahead. Sit over. Yep.
Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive, and I was here 4 years ago when you discussed this issue, and I know that, as far as I know, there's no dispensaries around the area, and having seen some comments on Facebook today, which I know we don't care to talk too much about, but sometimes there are things that are said that I pay attention to, and there are people in town that have to travel to South Windsor and other areas, and they would like to see something closer to Newington. Unfortunately, I don't see any of them here tonight, but having followed this from 2014, I think it was, I think that it would be in the best interest of some of our residents if they were able to go to a dispensary closer than South Windsor or even into Hartford. I don't know where the dispensaries are, but I would be in favor of changing it to the Burlington, or it would be adding to the regulation, the Berlin Turnpike Zone. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Okay. Like I said from the beginning, this is in conjunction with another portion that we're taking up next. At this point, what is the pleasure of this commission with this particular application?
Make a motion to close and move it to old business.
So, second.
Motion made and second. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll take it up later under old business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner.
That would be item A, B, C, D.
E, right?
Item E. Huh? Did you close it for,
He didn't say this meeting.
which meeting are you closing this to? Who made the motion?
I did.
You didn't move it to a meeting. You want it to close for, and act it on tonight, or you want it moved to enact it on at the next meeting?
I'd like to act on it tonight if possible. Whatever the majority of commissioners want to do.
You make the motion, so you want to amend your motion, make it.
I want to make a motion, we close and act on it tonight under old business.
And the second was Fox?
Second.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move it to item E under old business. John, while you're sitting there, you could take up the next application. We'll have the secretary read it. It's 0918.
Petition 09-18, special permit, section 6.16.3. Medical marijuana dispensary at 22272 Turnpike, Berlin Turnpike. Seva Sedan LLC, owner applicant John M. Kelly, 66 Cedar Street, Suite 208, Newington, Connecticut. Contact.
Okay, the applicant is here. It's the same applicant for the previous application we just heard. This is a continuation, basically, the next portion of his application. Go ahead.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners and staff. Again, John Kelly for the applicant, 293 Maple Hill Avenue, Newington, Connecticut, 06111. What I've just passed out is more for the purposes of pictures, okay? Because so you get an idea of the actual location of 2272-2294 Berlin Turnpike, where we're proposing the use. And, you know, if the commission so decides to approve the allowing of the medical marijuana dispensary in the BT, Berlin Turnpike BT zone, we would propose that it be located in this building, which is a building that was approved by this commission, I believe, also in 2014. And it hosts the Medcare In-N-Out Medical Center, Express Medical Center, and that faces the Berlin Turnpike. And next door to that is the LabCorp, which is a laboratory where, you know, have blood and blood testing, that kind of thing, lab testing. That's the picture on the left. That's the front. The dispensary would be located in the back, and that's the picture on the right where it's marked dispensary entrance, okay? So the proposal is that it would be in the back, so it would not face the Berlin Turnpike. And again, we're talking about, as I mentioned earlier, the issue of being discreet. That's certainly something that the Department of Consumer Protection is concerned with. And, you know, frankly, what the issue there is, people want to be discreet because when they are eligible and they have the card to be allowed to purchase this, they may have, well, they have probably severe medical issues that maybe they don't want people to know about, and it's respecting that. And, you know, the signage is also intended to be discreet, as identifying it, and the signage, of course, this commission has to approve, if the application were to be approved, you have to approve any signage that is involved here, but also there's some strict signage requirements anyway from the Department of Consumer Protection. So again, the idea is for these dispensary locations to be discreet and, you know, as private as possible, you know, within reason. And so the fact that this would be located and entered in the back is one way that's accomplished here. So it's something that, there's not going to be any big billboards on the Berlin Turnpike or, large signage or anything like that. But it is going to be located on the Berlin Turnpike facing the back. And again, we talked about not only the need in the community, but also the need, regionally for this use. And if you go through, the package that I've given you indicates, the communities in the area and, how this location would be very accessible, not only to Newington residents, but in the easily accessible on the Berlin Turnpike to the entire region. Okay. Security and making sure that only certain people can get into the get into the dispensary. It's not I mentioned in the statement of purpose that there's a retail similarity here, and I mentioned that in the earlier presentation. But it's not a pharmacy like we think of a CVS or some other pharmacy where you can buy other things. You can only buy medical marijuana related medicines, and you can only go there if you have the authority to go there. You have to have a card that allows you to go there, and and the security is very tight on that. Okay, I mean, this commission can be very comfortable that this applicant has every intention of complying with all of the, not only your commission regulations, but also the Department of Consumer Protection regulations. I mean, they went through the trouble a couple of weeks ago of producing this document, which is about 600 pages or something, of lots of information for the Department of Consumer Protection to consider in giving the approval. And of course, that's pending now with the Department of Consumer Protection. One of the criteria for approval at the Department of Consumer Protection, not surprisingly, is approval of the local zoning authority. So, but there are many areas, obviously financial considerations that they have to disclose. They have to disclose security procedures that the dispensary will utilize to make certain that the product is only sold to those who are eligible to have it. And there's many strict controls on, you know, the prescription of it and all of that. And believe me, the last thing this applicant would ever want to do is get approved and then do something to violate those strict procedures that the Department of Consumer Protection has ordered. So it's a careful process. It's a very detailed process, but it's also one that has many protections built in for the town and for the community at large to, you know, make sure that this is going to be an appropriate, safe, and lawful dispensary for medical marijuana. So, you know, the building that was approved in 2014 won't be modified at all in terms of its exterior, okay? So there's not going to be any changes, no additions, no, you know, new doorways or things like that. It's all existing, okay? There will be internal renovations to provide the security and other elements that need to happen in the lower rear part of the building. And if you've ever been to the site, you know, the Medical Express that faces the Berlin Turnpike, that's, you know, at a level of the Berlin Turnpike, whereas the entrance to the dispensary is down a hill in the back. And, you know, there's certainly, in terms of parking, there's not, you know, there's plenty of parking at the site. And certainly, you know, those issues are clearly, you know, there isn't an issue with any kind of traffic issues within the site. There is that driveway that comes off Prospect, but that's a one-way driveway. That's how it was approved when you know, it was approved in 2014. And it allows access into the site, into the rear of the site, off Prospect Street. But you can't go out that way. You have to exit on the turnpike. And of course, there's egress and ingress on the turnpike. So, you know, as the commission looks at the, you know, the considerations of a special, you know, your special permit rules, you know, we're not going to be asking for any extra signage or anything other than, you know, there's a pylon sign and that kind of thing. And of course, that's all subject to the regulations. There is the, you know, the building, like I said, was built in 2014. It complies currently with all the necessary building and fire codes and all that stuff. It's a brand new building. And also, all of the uses in the building, I think I mentioned this, but are medically oriented, okay? And all of the most of the tenants, there are 3 tenants, most of the tenants are affiliated with the applicant. There is the lab that I mentioned that is a national tenant, and they have expressed their support for this application. So they don't have a problem. And again, the idea is that the entire building would then, if the commission were to approve this, the entire building would be for medical purposes. And, and only 600 square feet of this building would actually be the medical marijuana dispensary. And that's 600 square feet in the back on the lower level. So.
Okay. That conclude your presentation?
Mr. Chairman, let me just check one thing, but I believe that should cover it. In terms of the, you're all familiar with that area, the Berlin Turnpike. It's definitely some mixed uses. Next door you have the veterinary hospital, and our building is going to be all medical. It's currently all medical uses. And of course, retail in in that area. I would note about the distance consideration that staff noted, and that is, that is something that the commission has to consider. I would point out that the commission does have the discretion to consider the buffering that the distance may, that the slight distance difference between 1,000 feet and I think it's like 780 feet or something along those lines, as the staff notes indicate, staff statement indicates. Again, this is going to be in the back, down a hill, with the rest of the building in front, and then the green space and parking areas in the Berlin Turnpike, and then 4 lanes of a Berlin Turnpike, and then a hill with trees, and then the residential area, Cedarwood Lane. So I think while it doesn't strictly meet those concerns, it certainly doesn't border residential areas, and it meets all your other criteria, both in the requirements for medical marijuana locations and your other special permit areas, which which I touched on moments ago. So,
John, is just a question for you that pertains to that. Is the state, under the state regulations, do they have a distance requirement to residential?
they do not for the dispensaries, my understanding is they do not.
Mr. Planners, have you looked at that?
No.
Okay.
No.
When we originally approved it, I sat on this commission. It was specifically for an I zone, and we rehashed for several meetings the distance requirements, and we looked at different distances. And we determined that the 1,000 feet was the distance requirement that we would like to keep away from residence-owned churches, schools, and we put that in part of the regulation. This amendment that you're looking for has piggybacks on the industrial regulation, so whatever we approved in the industrial zone would apply to this. You're also familiar with the McKinsey case where the judge will not let us, they made a determination that this commission, zoning commissions don't have the luxury of waiving requirements of our zoning regulations, and that the appeal or the way that you could get around that would be to go to zoning board of appeal, but you'd have to have some kind of a hardship to go to them. Let me ask the planner a question. Where do we measure the distance requirements? Because they're 770 something feet. Now, if you measure it from the doorway of the dispensary, you might pick up another, you're picking up some footage, and I don't know where you're,
Mr. Chairman, my understanding was from the curb on the front of the lot.
It's from the front.
Is what was the measurement done, but
A property, is what it says.
is that how we measure it, Mr.
You
Flanagan?
just read it.
Yes, right. What the regulation says is all distances contained in this section shall be measured by taking the nearest straight line between the respective lot boundaries of each site. So,
This 775.8 feet is from the curb line to the zone line.
no, it's actually more generous. It's to Centerwood Street, which is.
Cedarwood.
I'm sorry, Cedarwood. I keep saying Cedarwood, which the actual zone boundary is even less than that. The zone boundary is maybe like 600 feet or so.
Yeah, because I'm looking, okay, so on the map that you've provided, you're showing from the curb line, basically, you were very generous and gave them the depth of the lots on Cedarwood and gave that to him. I don't know how we.
Yeah, he didn't give us the depth, didn't give us the depth of our lot, but.
No, we gave you the depth of the lots on
Yes,
Cedarwood,
yes.
but that don't get us to 1,000 feet. I don't know, I will have to ask the commission for comments on that. I mean, it's part of the industrial, everything else with this application is your use, the need, everything, you meet all of the criteria except for that distance requirement. And I have to talk to the commissioners.
And I would think the commission has some discretion in terms of, because of the issue of the distance is, again, looking at buffering and looking at the purpose for the distance, and with the location being in the back, and.
I'll let the planner address that, but.
Unfortunately, as the chairman invoked McKenzie, the regulation is pretty specific. If we had a vaguer regulation, then maybe the commission would have some wiggle room, but we describe pretty specifically how to measure distance in the context of medical marijuana.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll proceed with the hearing, and we'll get some comments from the commissioners, and we'll get some comments from the public.
Mr. Chairman, before you let Attorney Kelly go, Section 5.2.6, which is the special permit section of regulations, requires the commission to find that your application complies with those criteria. So this would be the time to go through those 6 or 7 criteria, and the commission can nod or shake their head if they don't feel that you've satisfied those criteria.
Absolutely, okay.
That'd be page 65 of the
I
zoning.
have it right, I have it right in front of me.
Go ahead, John, just run through them, and I'll tell you whether
Okay,
you
yep.
comply or not.
I did discuss the need, I don't know, is that,
Well, you've pretty much defined it with the handout you gave, and you,
Yeah, well, item A is the need for the proposed use in the proposed location, so the commission is satisfied with that, okay? Item B, the existing and probable future character of the neighborhood in which the use is located.
and we discussed what's existing there and what's likely to exist there now, so I don't think it's at all inconsistent with what's there.
Okay.
But again, that's,
It's up to the commission, of course.
Yep.
Item C, the size, type, and location of main and accessory buildings in relation to one another and in relation to other structures in the vicinity.
that's not applicable.
Yeah, I think that's because you already made the decision and we're not proposing any alterations to the footprint of the building. It's going to be all internal. So.
Item D, traffic circulation within the site, amount, location, and access to parking, and traffic load or possible circulation problems on existing streets or proposed streets and driveways, considering impact on existing streets are affected. And then it goes on to talk about large-scale retail development. So I'll stop reading at that.
Yep, and I did talk about traffic issues, again, no exterior changes to the building.
Item E, availability of public water and sewer, and possible overloading of water and sewage systems.
Yeah,
It's on the MDC system, both water and sewer. The 600 square foot dispensary would not adversely affect those services.
Item F, location and type of display signs, lighting and landscaping, and the impact of type signs on adjacent properties.
If they comply with the state regulations, the sizes, they're pretty small, and they're not overly advertising.
And finally, G, safeguards to protect adjacent property and the neighborhood in general from detriment, including but not limited to proper buffering.
Well, that's,
So if the commission is satisfied that the applicants are not going to severely impact the neighborhood, would be appropriate finding.
well, it's in a medical building, and it's a medical use, so I wouldn't think that it would adversely affect anything.
And as we talked about, the neighborhood that's closest is on the other side of the Berlin Turnpike up a hill, so, but.
Right.
Again, that's for the commission to, evaluate, certainly.
Okay, we'll open it up to the public. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Rose Lyons, 46 Alton Drive. I think I'm probably the only one here that's going to say anything, so if it's not, I'm not in favor or against it, but have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. When you were discussing your regulations back in 2014, I asked the question whether or not anybody had looked at the regulations for surrounding towns. I don't think that any surrounding towns had regulations then.
Did not.
And now Weathersfield has an application pending for their town center zone, which is on Silestine Highway. I talked to Peter Gillespie today, their town planner. I failed to ask him if there was any distance between residential areas in their zoning laws. I don't know if anybody knows that. And in looking at that map, in my head, I'm thinking about the condos or the houses that are on the corner of Prospect and the Berlin Turnpike. It looks like it's a shorter distance between those houses than it is across the Berlin Turnpike, but it may be deceptive in the way I'm looking at it.
Regulations says single-family homes.
What's that?
Regulations state that it's
Oh, it's just-
single-family homes.
Okay.
I'm not sure why it doesn't have other residents, but the
Those aren't
regulations.
single-family homes. What are they considered, townhouses or something?
Those are either apartments or townhouses or condos.
Okay, so it has to be,
Is that what the regulation says? Single-family homes?
It does.
Yeah,
okay,
I thought it said residence,
well, when you said
Residence zone.
residential, maybe residential zone.
Any property that is zoned for single-family residential use.
So those aren't single-family, which is what you're telling me. Okay. And going across the Berlin Turnpike, there's direct access to Cedarwood Lane. Yeah, I'm just, in my head, I'm thinking there's an awful lot of,
I don't believe
there's stores and there's woods
Yeah, I
and,
don't believe there's a direct access from the Berlin Turnpike to Centerwood. I think you have to get to Centerwood from,
No, there's a road.
It's a private road.
the private road, but,
Cedarwood, yeah.
oh, Cedarwood,
Yeah.
okay.
The road off the turnpike is a private
I mean,
road.
in my head, I'm just thinking it's
It's a
not.
driveway, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, driveway up to, that connects the turnpike to Cedarwood Lane.
Right.
And I think there's a house there, I don't know.
On a corner.
Yeah, something, I think.
Okay, I'm just, like I say, I'm just looking at it, knowing the area. And I would think, in my opinion, when I was listening to what you were talking about, limiting the 1,000 feet for residential areas, I was thinking, you could have direct access to the area. And now I'm looking at it, and other than that road, there's real no direct access, and I don't even know how the residents would be affected by what was going on. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Unfortunately, Rose, that's not the way the regulations
know.
were written. It
No,
says 1,000 feet. We don't have the luxury of waiving 1,000 feet. I wish we did, because this application, in my opinion, only my opinion, meets all the other criteria. I'll open it up to commissioners. If there's some way that we could look at this differently, we'll discuss it. Anyone else in the public wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application?
Ask one more question.
No, Rose, we had enough. Commissioner remarks.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the planner, I'm a little confused. I see a total of 781.69 feet in the black square. And you see 775. I see 775.80 feet, which is what?
Yeah, that's a function of the GIS program that the IT department created. I flinched as I lifted the cursor off of the page, and it added another 6 feet to the total. So it's a computer error. The point is, we're well within 1,000 feet.
No, I understand. I was just confused, that's all.
Yeah, it's,
Thank you.
yeah.
Any commissioner comments? Commissioner Woods.
Yeah, fortunately, I don't know if we can't do this, but the applicant could, I suppose, apply for an amendment to this text. I mean, it's pretty clear in G. It's all distances contained in this section shall be measured by taking the nearest straight line between the respective lot boundaries. So, I mean, to be honest with you, this measurement we have at 775 feet is less. It's probably 150, 160 feet less, whatever the depth of that lot is. So it'd be from the front lot of the applicants to the rear lot line on Cedarwood Lane. So we won't even have the 775 feet, unfortunately.
Any?
But that would be my suggestion.
Commissioner Camillo.
Tenants that are in the building, there's going to be four tenants in the building?
It will be the fourth tenant, yes.
Yes. And 3 of the 4 are the same owner as the building?
2 of the 3 currently are the owners or affiliated with the owner.
But the new
The
one-
lab, oh, and then, right, 3 of the 4 will be
same
affiliated,
people.
yeah, exactly, yes.
So the doctor will be the
Yes,
same?
yeah, exactly. The doctor is involved with this application.
3 will be the same as the doctor?
That's correct, yes. Only the lab is the national company that's not affiliated with, they're pure tenants because they are third parties, they're not part of this, yeah.
Commissioner Payne, we have any way we could, it keeps getting less and less the distance. Unless you come in with a text amendment to, and I know that this application is under some timelines with the state of Connecticut, because I've been reading in the paper that they're ready to give out permits between 3 and 10 to this additional dispensary for the whole state of Connecticut. And then you got every town in the state looking to put in regulations. We have our regulations in place. Unfortunately, this distance requirement is a hang-up. Commissioner Woods.
I mean, it is interesting that in our regulations, we want 1,000 feet from the dispensary, but only 100 feet from the production facility.
Is that what it says? Then
Yeah,
it's an error.
It says it, no, it says it several times. Well, if it is, it's an error, but it says it in here. No medical marijuana production facility shall be allowed on a site that is less than 100 feet from any property that is zoned for single-family residential use. That's a typo?
It has to be. I'm
reading it's D.
There was commissioners here, Don, that you remember the distance was 1,000 feet. I think it's an,
so it's a typo.
and I'm looking at Commissioner Annis, who sat on it and was instrumental in getting this thing passed. I think we all agreed on 1,000 feet for everything, schools, residents. That's got to be a typo.
Okay, so we might want to have that corrected
Yeah,
then.
the planner has to make sure.
I'll look into that.
We would never have put on 100 feet for it. That's
Yeah, it
the
makes sense to me, but-
the worst part of the regulation is the production. We saw problems in the production, and we saw very little problems with the dispensary. We felt that there was questions of air quality and other things that, with the growing aspects that we had questions on. We would have never made that less than what we would want for a dispensary, so that is a typo. Is so you'll get that changed.
I'll check that.
Okay.
May I?
Go ahead.
You might also want to check B, because also in B, it goes, no medical marijuana production facility shall be allowed within 100 feet of a church, temple, or other place used primarily for religious worship.
That was 1,000 feet.
Huh?
I believe that was 1,000 feet also.
So there's two in there.
Yeah, I believe the whole thing was, it was consistent with the dispensary and the growing. The distance requirements was consistent with each other. Because we battered around different distance requirements. We talked about 500 feet, and we talked about 1,500 feet, and we ended up settling at 1,000 feet for everything. And I believe that's the way it went. Commissioner Camilla was on at the time. I don't know who else. Were you on, Stanley?
Yes.
You remember the
Remember, it was 1,000 feet after, I remember we were up 1,500, we were down 5.
Yeah.
I think we agreed on 1,000 feet.
There were only a couple industrial areas that it could be.
A couple areas that would fit into.
Mountain Road and.
We had, unfortunately, we had no experience because we were one of the first towns to tackle the marijuana dispensary and production facilities in the state. We were one of the first ones. And we had no experience, and we said, well, we're going to make just this specific area industrial zones because we don't know what the ramifications are. Unfortunately, we find out so many years later that they're not a problem. There's no problems with any of the existing facilities. I've done some research in it. They're well run. They're very secure. They're not obnoxious to the public where they are advertising. I mean, it's a real low-key industry. But we didn't have that experience to go by in the beginning, unfortunately.
I would just ask before we assume it's a typo to go back and check.
Yes.
Because I'm actually a little light bulb's coming on in my head now too. Wasn't this commission tasked with that because someone was looking to do something on, wasn't it North Mountain Road?
Yeah, there was someone that came in within a month or so of
The
your
1,000 feet
deliberation.
wouldn't work for
with
North
another
Mountain
one.
Road.
Mm-hmm.
No, it did, because it was only one small corner of North Mountain Road and it worked.
Wait. I don't know, I don't remember where the facility
And
was.
there was another.
But if we just check, that's
Fenn
all.
Road that worked.
If it is 1,000 feet, then it's a typo.
But that's specific to the growing operation, and if it was for some reason 100, we'll go back and revise it. Because that's not what the intent of this commission was, I can tell you that. Okay, any other commissioner remarks? Okay, can we get a motion to move this forward tonight?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and move it forward for action tonight. Do you need the number?
Second.
Motion made in second. We're going to move it to old business item F. Take them up to both of them at the same time.
Well, you
We'll
need-
act on them tonight. Okay,
Thank you.
you wanted, there's no rebuttal because no one was against it, so. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners.
We didn't vote, Mr. Chairman.
Huh?
We didn't vote.
Okay, all in favor of moving this
Aye.
forward?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Petition 03-18. Mike,
Petition 03-18, zoning text amendment, section 3.9, 3.12, 3.14, 3.16, 3.18, 3.20, 3.21, 5.3, 6.1, 7.4, and 7.6. Town Planning and Zoning Commission applicant contact.
Mr. Planner.
Okay, we went through this at the last meeting. We got all the way through them, but the commission wanted to keep it on the agenda or keep the public hearing open. So if there were public comments or if the commissioners wanted to discuss them any further, we could do that.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we close petition, we can't close it yet, you got a public hearing, sorry.
Second.
No, we're not
I
close.
didn't make a motion.
Sorry, I
Oh.
thought you did.
Oh, I'm sorry, let me, there was one item that was discussed, the parking issue. I went out and, to the bowling alley, in Newington and the, skating facility. I went to the bowling alley and, the regulation as proposed would require far less parking. I did misspeak, as Commissioner Payne knew. This regulation would require far less parking than is already out there. In fact, if we even went as high as 3 spaces per alley plus 1 space for each 2 employees, there would still be more parking there at the Bolorama than this regulation would require. And I went back to my parking regulation book, and although 2 spaces per alley was not uncommon, some towns required as much as 5 spaces per alley. There are towns that require three spaces per alley. So we could certainly increase that and still not make Bolorama non-conforming, and probably be sufficient parking for any new bowling alley that might want to go into business. Same thing with the skating facility. The skating arena, when it was approved by the town a number of years ago, it was approved with a waiver, because that's what we did back then. We waived the amount of parking that should have been, per the regulations, should have been required, mainly because the applicants said that they had an agreement with the VA to allow overflow parking in the VA parking lot. So those are a couple of Commissioner Anthony, trying to blank his last name, Claffey's concerns.
Here you go.
Thank you.
So with, this is a public hearing. We'll open it up to the public, and then we'll move it to the next meeting, and we'll discuss each one individually, and we'll take action on them individually. I think that's the cleanest way to handle this, because there's questions on that parking thing that we want to resolve, and there might be other items that we want to tweak a little bit. So at this point, we'll open up to the public. People wishing to speak in favor of this application, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. People in opposition, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Now, can we get a motion to close?
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we close petition 0318 and move it to old business for next meeting.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we'll move that to the next meeting. That will be the first thing on the agenda, so we have time to, the first thing that we should look at under what would be under old business?
Yes.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is new business. We took over, we eliminated 1218, which was the
Approval of minutes.
okay, I'm sorry. Trying to go too fast here. Approval of minutes, April 11, 2018. Everybody get a chance?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion made and second. Any additions or corrections? Mr. Fox?
On page 21, we were talking about, A-frame signs, temporary signs, and I mentioned an A-frame sign. It says here, how about an A-frame sign in front of a restaurant on Market Square in Constance Lee, if they have been doing that for a few years before? What I believe I said was, how about an A-frame sign in front of a real estate office, and meaning the Stilt building at the corner of Market Square, Constance Lee. They have an A-frame sign. It's not a real estate sign. It's not for real estate. It's for insurance, and that's out 24/7. So.
Okay, would you bring it to the attention of the zoning enforcement officer to take a look at that? Is this still there, Mike?
Yes, the other day it was anyway.
Any other corrections?
That's all I have.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You make the correction to that. Okay. Now we're into new business. application 1218, we took out, which is the walk-in medical marijuana, I'm sorry, medical walk-in center on Fen Road. We moved the 0718 to old business for action. That's later on. We took out the text amendment for the kennels and because of the litigation. And we're into old business petitions for public hearings scheduling.
No, petitions would be the next item after
Sorry,
old business.
sorry, old business. It's getting late here. Okay. So the first thing under old business, we have 4 items to take up. First one is the petition 0718. You want to read that?
I have a draft motion.
You have a draft motion. Thanks. Give you a second to read it. Someone like to make a motion? Mike, make the motion, please.
Okay, make a motion, petition 07-18, site plan approval at 22 and 26 Mazzucchelli Way.
Talk closer into the mic, please.
Lucy Robbins Wells Library, Inc., and Town of Newington owners. Lucy Robbins Wells Library, Inc., and Town of Newington applicant. Tanya D. Lane, 131 Cedar Street, Newington, Connecticut. Contact. I move to approve with conditions. Petition 07-18, site plan approval at 22 and 26 Mazzucchelli Way. Lucy Robbins Wells Library, Inc., and Town of Newington owners, Lucy Robbins Wells Library, Inc., and the Town of Newington applicant, Tanya Lane, 131 Cedar Street, Newington, Connecticut. Contact. Conditions. 1, the applicant will revise the site plan to address the town planner's comments dated April 12, 2018. 2, the applicant will revise the site plans to address the town engineer's comments dated April 25th, 2018.
Any second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any comments on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You can move that to, I don't know, wherever you'll report this back to the council. Okay. The next item under old business would be Azteca petition 0518. Do you have a motion?
That, I do not have a draft motion for that.
Okay, we have to act on this tonight because of time periods. We won't have another meeting until after the date of the May 5th, which the event is. Running out of time. If you don't act on it tonight, it'll be approved. So it's whatever your pleasure is. Someone make a motion at this point, or would you like the planner to give the planner an indication of which way you would like the motion to be written, and he will write it? Okay, someone talk, someone give me some information here.
Make a motion, petition 05-18, special permit, section 3.15.3, outside restaurant seating at 3260 Berlin Turnpike, Plaza Azteca Restaurant. John Kennelly applicant, Cleavon Newington LLC, owner Manuel Rubio, 3260 Berlin Turnpike, Newington, Connecticut. Contact. Continued from April 11, 2018. Deadline to close. Public hearing, May 1st, 2018. I move to deny with conditions.
You don't need conditions. just
Findings.
no
Findings.
Okay.
Findings are.
Go ahead.
Well, the lack of police coverage might be a reason.
Police coverage, fire marshal not being involved, and past history.
Can you collectively go elaborate a little bit about the fire marshal issue?
He said he wasn't going to be involved. He wasn't going to be part of it. That's what it said.
Right, okay. Does anybody want to?
Anybody else
More
want to
detail on
give him
that?
some information and why we're denying it? Mr. Payne, you want to put on the record what your thoughts are as far as the, what section of the regulation it came under?
Well, I did state at the last meeting that I thought he was under the wrong regulations, but I understand why the planner put it here, but nobody agreed with me last meeting. I have nothing to add right now.
Any commissioner comments on this?
Are you looking for kind of a
Well, we're looking for something on the record.
on the fire
that-
marshal?
We're looking for input on the record to substantiate a vote to deny this.
Well,
That's
finding.
what the motion is.
Well, finding A, and adding to Commissioner Camillo's motion with findings. Finding A, the applicant will not have any fire protection or participation by the fire marshal's office, which may present a danger to the safety of those that are attending.
Well, I'm not sure that's what the record would show.
Can we apply a condition that isn't required, that fire marshal isn't required to provide coverage for this, correct?
You mean, could you use that as a reason to
Yeah,
deny it?
so we're going to use it as a reason because.
Well, that's why I was asking for that point to be
Not required.
elaborated on.
He's not required to be there.
Yeah, so how can we use that as a reason to deny? We shouldn't,
That's what
You're
I'm
right.
getting at, yeah.
right?
Right.
Unless there is some reason related to the fire marshal that would be grounds to deny. But I'm not sure I heard any in the testimony.
Can we second this so that we can discuss it more?
Okay, we got a motion on the floor, and is there a second?
I'll second it so we can go into discussion.
Okay, want to continue what we started?
You have one reason that the fire chief, I'm sorry, that the police chief has said that he will not provide coverage, and the applicants have said that they're going to have private security there, but it's up to the commission, of course, to determine whether private security is sufficient and not having the police coverage that has been there in years past is what the commission feels is necessary, if that's what the commission feels.
Commissioner Woods?
Just a question. And this is going out to the entire commission, does the commission I realize there's a motion to deny it, but would there be any entertaining a motion to approve it with the 150 inside and restricting the outdoor from 400 down to maybe like 300, something that's more manageable? And one other thing.
If we take a vote on this,
Okay.
this particular thing that's on the floor with the second, and it fails, then you could make a motion. A motion could be made to act in favor with conditions if you so choose.
Okay.
But I think the procedure would be that we would act on the motion that's on the floor, unless the maker of the motion and the seconder wish to withdraw their motion at this time and allow someone else to make a motion. I don't see anybody moving.
I make a motion to withdraw at this time. Someone else can make a motion.
Second, you want to?
Yeah, I seconded it. I'll withdraw my second.
Okay, now if one of you would like to make a motion.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the petition with whatever their regular occupation is for the interior of the building, which I believe is somewhere between 150 and 164, but whatever.
Whatever the
Whatever the existing.
occupancy rate
Excuse me,
is on the
occupancy,
building.
Thank you, not occupation. And limit the outdoor from, I believe they were looking for 400 to 300. And then I have one question and one more other condition. I don't know if I can add it, but I'll ask it. I would like to see some sort of a bond posted to make sure that the abutting properties are cleaned in a timely manner the following day. So that, because there's going to probably be some litter. And I'm going to assume that they will go ahead and clean it, but I would like to have that assurance that there would be a bond, and I would say that bond would be $2,500.
You have the authority to do that. Whether the amount of the bond is unreasonable would be something different, but yes, you definitely have the authority to require a bond if you wish.
I would look to you for help with the amount, but $2,500 doesn't go very far today. And it shouldn't be anything if it's cleaned up. So if it's cleaned up, it's a check that comes in and a check that goes back out.
Right. And you want to be in the form of a check, of cash, basically.
A cash.
Prior to the event, right.
Although my motion's not going to go anywhere unless it's second.
I will second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Payne.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on a revised motion to approve with conditions, and the conditions are limitations on the number of people that could attend basically the occupancy of the inside and the amount of people that can be admitted to the outside, which are, as the attorney stated for the applicant, it's two separate actually events, one inside and one outside. So there any other conditions beyond that? And there would be a bond for cleanup, which would be determined by the planner.
Well, no, you need to put that in the motion, but I can't help you as to how much of the bond should be.
$2,500 is what you requested, that's fine. That makes them want to clean it up. Higher?
5,000.
Okay.
And I believe the attorney would agree with that amount.
Okay.
Without talking out of turn, we will stipulate on the record that 5,000 is a reasonable bond for cleanup.
Okay, thank you.
Then I'm fine with that change. Who, you second it?
Second.
No. Yeah,
He seconded.
Oh, you
it.
seconded. Don seconded. I'm sorry.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor with Mr. Payne.
Yeah, I just wanted to get into discussion. So by the reduction of that, I think that controls the amount of people in there, and it also controls the amount of parking. So figuring that usually a couple people go together, there's going to be ample parking at the site. There will be no reason for anybody to park off-site. So I believe the motion that Commissioner Woods came up with is fair.
Okay. Motion's on the table with conditions. We will ask for a roll call vote. The chairman will vote last in case of a tie.
Commissioner Payne,
Yes.
Commissioner Fox,
With reservations, yes.
Commissioner Woods,
Yes.
Commissioner Sobieski,
Yes.
Commissioner Canillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Braverman,
Yes.
Commissioner Aida.
Yes. So we're giving you permission to do this on a one-time basis. If it comes out good, you will allow you to come back next year, but you can't talk as much as you did this year.
I again thank the commission for your volunteerism and listening to me so many times.
Okay, and you know, because of the testimony that you put in, we're looking to you to control your because we don't have real good success with what happened in the past. So we're looking to you as the attorney to help us with this, that this event comes off without any hitches.
Commissioner, I'm a lifelong resident of Hartford, and I think many of you are familiar with my family.
Yeah.
I will make sure this is not what it was last year.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is 0818, which is the text amendment for the medical marijuana dispensary.
And that I do have a draft motion available.
Do 09 first.
I'm, s-
Well, you need to do the text amendment before you can do the,
Well, if 09 doesn't.
because as of now,
go, then
09 is not legal.
You might not need the text amendment if 09 doesn't pass.
If you want to do 09 first, but that,
no,
you can't approve 09 until you act on 8.
It wouldn't be legal.
It'd be better to do 8 first.
I'd like to, I don't know if this is out of the ordinary, if I could do this. I'd like to have the attorney come back up before we vote on this. I have just a couple of questions pertaining to this.
Close the public hearing.
You have to reopen the hearing, which you can do. It's awkward because people might have left.
Okay, then I won't. I'm sorry, John.
Oh, no problem. No.
This is what to approve. Basically, move to approve.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was my impression, was the direction you were going with the text amendment.
With the text amendment, after looking at the distance requirements, I don't believe that this is a motion that I could support, because this is a motion to approve, because if we have a problem with the distance requirements in the next part of the application, I'd like to have the opportunity to have the attorney come and change the text amendment for the distance requirements, because he's.
Oh, I wouldn't recommend you do that, because that's a pretty substantial change from the proposal that was filed with the town clerk, that was sent to CROG.
I understand that. That's a new application.
Oh, to be taken up next month.
Your Honor, that's correct. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Your Honor is good. You could use that if you wish.
Mr. Chairman, it's not appropriate for him to be speaking at this point.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was
We're
gonna
at
make a request, but-
the deliberations. Let's get into the deliberations, and then we'll have an opportunity for you to talk, I believe. Commissioner Woods.
Mr. Chairman, can we table this till next meeting? Would that be appropriate? And then we can get your questions and the,
I'm looking for a
and the
way,
commissions?
I'm looking for a way to actually put the other one first and then this one second, because you understand the problem that that I'm running up against here.
But if we table this one, we'll have to take this one up first eventually. And if we table the other one, or actually maybe we'll have to deny the other one, or they withdraw the other one and come back for a text amendment, then it will work. So this can stay on hold for a while.
I believe time is of the essence for the applicants, right? I think that's what they said he said in his presentation.
Can I ask another question?
Sure, go ahead.
If we do approve this,
The text amendment.
it helps him and he's one step closer, but he can't do anything because the next one, he doesn't meet the regulation and we can't amend the regulation. So
They really are very separate from each other. You can approve the text amendment and still, for a variety of reasons, deny the special permit. But you can't approve the special permit until you approve the amendment.
Okay, so we can't table this and act on the other one. We have to act on this one first.
Correct, because as of now, the special permit is not legal because it's in a zone where dispensaries are not allowed.
Okay.
Chairman, am I allowed to be heard as the applicant or no?
No, but do you have a question or you want to clarify something that was said before?
Well-
But you really can't give them any new information.
No, it's not new information. It would be for the purposes of withdrawing the second
Okay,
application at this time, so we can, review the situation with the, issues brought up, that would be what I would be looking to do.
You're still looking for us to act on the amendment as you.
Yes, because
as
we
you-
don't,
Okay.
we don't see a problem with that, but most certainly the application with the issues brought up, we want to see a little more time to see if there's something we can do to, amend the situation, and obviously that can't be done tonight, so.
Well, then the text amendment wouldn't help you later either.
No, he always needs the text amendment, but I think he's looking to
create
fix
a
the
new-
problem, the other problems with his special permit application,
With the distance requirements.
presumably.
Right, and maybe that's for another amendment or something that we propose, but, for now, that's not something you can do
Well,
tonight,
both
so.
Maybe
See,
you
the
should-
problem is, John, is that I see it, is that when I look at the boundaries of the zone, it looks like you're gonna run into that 1,000 feet almost everywhere in that specific, BT zone. When I don't see any pieces that are not with, I could be wrong. Huh?
But I suppose another amendment could be proposed with the.
Maybe you should, just a suggestion, withdraw both applications and then come back with a new proposed text amendment.
Yeah, because the
With
text
your-
amendment doesn't do anything unless you get the other one, and you could run them in conjunction like you did this
Right,
one.
fair enough.
And you could make the necessary changes to your text amendment to, I don't know.
Right,
you
I
know.
understand, Mr. I understand.
Okay.
I think that's what,
We could get it scheduled at the very next meeting,
That's what we'll
possibly.
propose to do, Mr. Chairman.
Can we
Thank
get
you.
this on, if he does his due diligence, could we get this done to the next meeting? I know they're running across a real tight schedule with the state, and it doesn't even make any sense to go forward
Go
with
to
it
CROG?
if it's.
CROG, yeah. It needs to go to CROG 30 days before the public hearing. And your next meeting is, well, your May 23rd, well,
No.
even if June would be, the first meeting in June would be the earliest the hearing could be, even if you get it to me
The
tomorrow.
first meeting in June, yeah.
Could be the first.
How fast is the state making, there's people in there now making presentations to the state. Are they shutting that off?
Well, as far as the state is concerned, as long as we get the approval, it's better to have it sooner rather than later, but it's also, an approval is what the applicant needs, not, obviously a denial doesn't do us any good. So if there's a way to, regroup, that would help my clients. That's why I'm suggesting we withdraw, and at the suggestion of the commissioners, we'll withdraw, both applications.
Okay, how do we do that on the record?
He just said he wants to withdraw both applications?
Yes.
Okay, it's done.
Okay, so you're gonna get working on it real quick, John, so he could get it to CROG, because that's a hangup, that's 30 days.
Yes.
We don't wanna push this into July, and then you're missing the boat completely.
We will do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
That takes care of, items under old business.
Right.
Next item is petitions for public hearing scheduling. On petition 1318, the Montana Knights axe throwing, is that everything that we discussed, is it in-house?
We have, and I believe I gave you a copy of it, the new site plan showing all of the information that I believe the commission feels you need to be able to make an informed decision on the alcohol application. You have everything you need to make that decision. What I advise the applicant of, however, is that the landlord has applied for site plan modification, but that application is incomplete and it's still being processed.
Until that site plan is done, I'm not willing to.
Well, it is done. I mean, you have it, but you haven't approved it. But it shows all the information that I believe you need, the amount of parking, which is what you need for.
Has all staff, including engineering, reviewed it so that they have comments back to us
No, because
Okay,
not, the site plan application, which is related but separate, is not ready to go forward because the engineering department did not get what they need, drainage reports and so forth. But the special permit application for alcohol, you have all you need to make a decision as to whether that's an appropriate use for the site, whether there's enough parking, all the things that you consider when you approve a use, but not the site plan. I'm not asking you to approve the site plan at this point, just using it as information to approve the special permit.
Did they post a bond?
No. Not that I know of. They might have with the billing staff, but not that I know. I don't know if they did.
It's up to the commission. I'm not.
Let me just say one more thing. It's the applicant has done everything he can. The tenant, the would-be tenant, has done everything he can to give you the information that you need. It's unfortunate that the landlord has not given you everything that he needs to get your site plan approval.
Commissioner Wood.
I think we need the site plan before we can move forward on it.
Right, you have the site plan.
Yeah, well,
We need it.
We haven't approved it
We
yet.
need the work done or a bond posted. I mean, we don't have the comfort level with the owner of the property because he's in the building without the benefit of a certificate of occupancy. He disregarded, never did any of the work on the original site plan, just moved in. So there's no bond on it. We have no leverage with him. The only leverage we have is this application and this tenant. Unfortunately, he gets caught in the crosshairs, but for us to be able to move forward with this project, we need him to finish the original site plan. And he's not showing a willingness to do that because there's nothing at this point is being done. And I agree with Commissioner Woods. I mean, we need something here.
Well, but I would argue, and I will argue, that you have what you need to make a decision on the Montana Acts. You have a site plan showing parking, access, other uses going on in the building. You have what you need to make a decision as to whether this is an appropriate use or not.
I agree with that, except it's not completed. So I could move forward and either approve or deny based on what we have, but I wouldn't want it to be implemented. I would make a condition until that site plan actually goes from a piece of paper to the property that mimics it. They don't have a permit.
And again, all we're asking tonight is for you to schedule the hearing for this to take place at your next meeting. By that time, it's very possible the engineers for the landlord will have submitted all the information they need for the site plan modification application to be complete.
I'd rather have it in my hand than wait and schedule this and sitting here in the next meetings at the same position we're in now without benefit of the owner of the property participating and completing the site plan. That's my feelings on it. But I'll concede to what the commission wants. They want to move forward and put this on for a hearing. That's fine. Mr. Woods?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Planner, could the applicant still do that after the fact, within the next week or so, get that information to, and we could add it to an agenda, or no?
Well, that's what the scheduling is for, so we'd have to bring it up at the next meeting
for the following meeting.
For the following meeting.
Oh, all right. No, I was curious.
We're not really holding this guy up, the owner of the property.
And I understand that.
So,
You can tell me tonight that you want to hold the hearing on this at your next meeting on the condition that certain things happen between now and May 9th. That you could do, but you need to decide tonight if the hearing is going to take place on the 9th or not.
fine, if we could get a bond or the work done and completed and either that or the bond
Well, we say the work completed.
on the original site plan. Just
Yeah, but he's already done stuff that he no longer, that aren't shown on the approved plan. The approved plan, he sort of started from, but did not, he made some departures from it. Which is why he's coming back to you for a site plan modification,
Oh, and
to
this-
bless what he's
But
already
that,
done.
he hasn't done that. He hasn't given us the site plan modification.
Well, he submitted the plans, he just hasn't given us the engineering
In other
information.
words, the calculations for the drainage.
Exactly.
Haven't been determined, but we don't
Right.
need those calculations for drainage to determine if there's enough parking or not.
That's my
for
point.
For the tenant. And if and when that application comes in front of us, it can be approved with conditions, based on
It's up to
whether
you.
that
Yeah,
site
It's
plan-
up to the commission. You want to put it on. I'm just not comfortable with the owner. He hasn't shown the ability to be able to follow through on promises that he made in site plans that he's proposed.
I'm all right with waiting 2 weeks and letting them get a little farther on everything.
Commissioner Woods, Commissioner Sobieski? Feel comfortable putting this on, we can put it on, but,
I just have one other quick question. Mr. Chairman, you were on here when the back part was put in for that chemical handling or whatever it was back there.
right.
Did we not ask at that time for drainage calculations for that? Because I seem to remember, maybe Commissioner Camello can help me on this, that there was a outflow going to the north and down into there. And I think there was a question of how much water was going in there. And it was some issue, and I can't remember the whole thing, something with the town, or I can't remember it now. But I thought he was supposed to supply us calculations at that point.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's correct. Unfortunately, they didn't do the original site plan. Now they come in with who knows what part of that original is incorporated in the new and what's not. Commissioner Camillo?
Catch basins, one at the loading dock and then one in the middle of the property.
Right.
And they flow into the brook that flows through the highway garage property. And we asked for an oil water separator or a dry well. I'm not really sure where that
Right,
went.
now I remember that, yeah.
But we
Yeah.
did ask for that. And
I don't believe that was
I don't think it was done.
done. That's shown,
Right.
that was one of the things I believe that Mike said was not done.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we move, we wait 2 weeks.
Motion made and second. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, hopefully relay to the applicant that the owner has to bring this along further, and we will schedule this for a hearing.
Right.
Okay, the next application is petition 1418. You want to just read that, Mike?
Petition 14-18, special permit, section 6.16.3, medical marijuana dispensary at 36 Holly Drive, Mountain Laurel Living, LLC applicant. Holly Drive, 36 LLC owner, Jerry Farrell, 6 North Main Street, Suite 202, Wallingford, Connecticut, contact.
Hey, Mr. Planner, please explain what's going on with this application. I
Right.
see that one of the applicant is here. That's unusual for a scheduling hearing.
This is another application for medical marijuana dispensary with another separation issue. The site that they've proposed, 36 Holly Drive, is less than 1,000 feet from CCSU. It's like 996 feet. It's really close to 1,000, but it is definitely less than 1,000. And I brought this to the applicant's attention, and their response was, well, we're not sure that the TPZ meant to include colleges when it wrote the regulation saying that the use cannot be within 1,000 feet of a school. So they're in front of you tonight to lobby for a finding on the commission's part, because, and it's your regulation, you get to interpret it, whether you meant to say school, whether you meant colleges are included in the word school.
Okay.
And that's why he's here.
Or to address this issue of what our intent was when we said school.
Right.
But I believe Mr. Camillo has a question.
There's a house within 1,000 feet of that.
Is it a residential zone? The regulation says residential zone, not house.
Tell me, there's houses.
I don't care about houses, I care about zone. Nope,
Private
nope,
road.
don't. The only thing that matters is the zoning map.
What they're on is.
And I do not see any R zones within 1,000 feet of their location.
Where?
Um,
Right to the left there, where he is. A
Yep.
little further in.
to the left or to the right.
That's the green right there.
Yeah, but green is open space zone. Yes, green is open space zone. There's no residential zone within 1,000 feet of 36 Holly.
There's houses there, I'm just curious what zone it is. There's 2 houses up there. There's actually 3 houses up
Yes,
there.
but
Not in a residential zone.
right.
They're in,
Well,
Light green
it's
is in-
possible they could be in a residential zone and there's an error on the map, so we need to check the land records. The clerk's office would tell you, I have seen errors on this map before, so you could be correct, but if there is, houses over there, we need to know whether or not it's actually in a residential zone or not.
How would we ever know that there's an error on the map? How would we?
We've had errors on the map
I don't
before.
doubt that, I'm sure.
That's all I'm saying
But
is,
how would we-
I wouldn't want to go just by the colored map. That's what I'm stating. I don't think that we should just go by the colored map.
There is no
We
other
have,
map.
there is, on the land records with the town clerk, it would say what zone that house is on and being taxed for. Yes, it would. It would say it's R20, R12,
the
whatever.
assessor.
The assessor's map. Okay?
His
And I think
records.
that's the
I did.
only way to truly know whether or not it's.
Well, no, because his records could be wrong. In fact, if his records are different from yours, then I would say he is wrong, because this is your map. If he has information different from this, then I would say his records are wrong, not your map.
Commissioner Woods, you're familiar with that piece of property there.
I mean, it's the
There's
Marshall property.
actually 3 pieces.
There's 3 pieces up there.
3 pieces up there, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I think, I'd be very surprised if they're not zoned residential, but they might not be.
Now, what I will do is I'll go back and look through my collection of old zoning maps, because it's certainly possible that as the zoning maps were reproduced over the years, that a mistake was made in the coloring. So, yes, that's worth doing, right. I could do
Mr.
I
that.
don't think that's a
Sobieski.
residential zone.
Just, I need some clarification. Was that part of the old Reddick estate at one time?
That's one of the pieces. The other 2 was part of the old Marshall farm.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
That's something we'd have to look into, but the issue of today is what the intent of this commission was when we wrote the regulations for medical marijuana, what we meant by the word school. And I'll give it back to the planner.
Oh, I don't have anything beyond that?
You have a definition for
Well,
schools?
this, you don't have a definition of school in your regulation. My dictionary of much use of zoning terms does define school, and in fact, I think I even mentioned this in my report to you. Right.
Would you read it
Okay.
into the record?
Yes.
please?
Actually, let me bring it up on the screen here. Okay. My dictionary of development terms defines school as follows. Any building or part thereof that is designed, constructed, or used for education or instruction in any branch of knowledge. And I go on to say, that definition does not make any distinction between primary, secondary, or tertiary college or vocational schools. I have a small collection of what other towns' medical marijuana regulations, and Southington is the only town in my collection that also requires a minimum distance between medical marijuana facilities and schools. Southington's definition of school includes colleges.
Had the map, GIS map, when we did that, it showed a small section on Fenn Road over by, I know Sears Warehouse in that area.
was the only place.
I didn't hear you either.
Sears Warehouse behind that was the only place on Fen Road area that it fit where it wasn't near anything.
Oh, you're referring to the map that the CEO created that shows where medical marijuana uses could go
Correct.
in compliance with all the different overlapping requirements, right?
Commissioner Sobieski, you were on the commission when we approved the medical marijuana things. What was your interpretation of what a school was? Do you believe that the colleges, or did you think about that, or do you have any reservations at this time about what we approved and what we meant, or?
I believe at that time, school was school. We considered college and that as a school. And that's why Commissioner Camello just said there was only one spot on there where Sears Warehouse would fit. So I remember we had a real long discussion on this.
You were on the.
No, I was not here. I was going to suggest that if the whole board is going to make a decision on this, that we schedule it for next meeting and have the minutes of your discussion during that whole time when you did it. But unless you just talk to the people that served on it, I was not here during that regulation, for the record.
You can bring up the map that was drawn up.
Well, that was created much later. So that map wouldn't, well, that will show what the regulations allow, but that map wouldn't help you remember what you were thinking back then, because that map was created much later.
But there were only 2 spots in town where it was allowed. So it will show you that. Regardless if there's a school around it or not, it shows you 2 parcels where it was allowed.
Yeah, because that map was created under the understanding that school is school, and anything within 1,000 feet of CCSU would be prohibited.
That area wasn't part of that.
It was not?
No. It was further north.
Talk into the mic.
It was further north. So, if you could get the map for the next meeting, we can all look at it. You could show it to us. We'll go from there. We'll have that discussion next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, would it be a good idea maybe to get the minutes just to see what the discussion was?
Yeah, if we're gonna put this.
I'll do that, but it's like, you had several workshop meetings, several public hearings. It's going to be a lot of minutes that you'll be looking through. I'm happy to get them for you, but you're going to be looking through an awful lot of verbiage.
All right, thank you.
Yep. That would determine what our intent was. If Commissioner Camillo is correct, and he says that the zoning enforcement officer actually produced the map based on what we applied the regulations to, and it did not show this specific area as being being able to substantiate medical marijuana, then that proves what our intent was. That we felt that it was too close to this college, which we're saying is a school.
School or residential?
Or a residential. Can we allow him to talk?
Sure.
Okay, yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jerry Farrell Jr. I'm an attorney in Wallingford. I represent Mountain Laurel Living, which is the applicant. You have some correspondence from me on this particular topic. I guess the thing that I would draw your attention to is that your regulations do use the term college elsewhere. That if you go to your liquor section in particular, that your liquor section will refer to schools and colleges. So inherently, and there could be things in the past that can be referred to, but inherently, the language that is already in your regulations draws a distinction between schools and colleges by referring to schools and colleges in the liquor section, whereas in other sections, it only refers to schools. So I understand it's a very preliminary question, but, obviously we come in with trying to comply with all of your regulations, and based on conversations that we had, there was nothing that we saw that prohibited this at the time that we applied.
Okay, I think we need to get the record and have all the commissioners read the record and then make a determination what the intent of this commission was when we made the regulation up, what our intent was for schools, if it included colleges or not. But, we can only do that by looking at the record and applying certain criteria to what the record says. And under that conditions, I would think that we should not schedule this at this time. We'll put this on the agenda for the next time for discussion, and hopefully we could get the minutes, we all read them and make a determination whether we're going to let this go forward. It's pretty close. Would you're like six feet short?
Lacking 4 feet. And there is a legitimate issue, I believe, still on the distance, that if you know that area of town, that you've got Route 9, you've got the Iwo Jima Monument, you've got the college.
Just like the last application, we got, if you couldn't shoot with a cannon from the medical building to the zone. There's too much between them, but they don't meet the requirements.
Well, the question is, where does one stop and another begin? That there's a little blurriness here, so you've got 4 feet that you're talking about.
Yeah, well, we rely on the planning department to determine what the.
Well, no, actually, I'm going to tell the applicant to submit a survey to show that you're beyond that you're outside of the 1,000 feet, once you decided that that is in fact what your intent was.
And you heard the testimony before, it's from curb,
Right.
from property, what is it?
Property line.
Yeah, from the nearest abutting property line, so, whatever is closest to, either whether it be the front, side, rear, anywhere where you can measure the straight line from one piece of property to the other. The closest 2 points.
If you could disprove that if you could prove to us that it's more than 1,000 feet, then we'll schedule it. But in the meantime, we'll get the record and try to determine what our intent was.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Next item on the agenda is town planner's report.
Just go back to the agenda. Okay, in my report, I report on a couple of items. First, Newington Ridge Preserve. I'll just read it. At the last TPZ meeting, I was asked to have the town staff review the statement of values that Mr. Massimino had submitted. According to that statement, there's $92,019 worth of work remaining to be done. But the staff puts the number at $137,828. The bulk of the difference is due to the unfinished wetland mitigation, $0 versus $31,400. So there is still a fair amount of work to be done. But again, we do have a bond and more than that amount to cover the remaining work. And then I included a couple of communications in the agenda packet, which I discussed in my report to you. The proposed inland wetlands regulation amendments. The Conservation Commission has proposed to amend their regulations. And in Newington, by regulation, the Conservation Commission has to refer their regulation changes to you for your review and comment if you desire. And so.
Marked up one?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Do they need to answer something back from us by a certain time? I don't want to hold them up. A lot of this is boilerplate.
Yep. They need to hold a public hearing on it, and they need to send it to the town council. Trying to remember when they're planning on holding their hearing on it.
We should be able to answer anything by next meeting, read this between now and our next meeting.
Yes, and I'll go back and look at my notes tomorrow, and if it turns out their hearing is going to be soon, relatively soon, I'll let the commissioners know so that you can either individually give me your comments and I'll pass them along. But as I recall, it's not for quite a while yet. There's still some time for you to review these collectively and issue whatever comments on them that you may wish to.
Okay.
And then the other communication was just to bring you up to date on the state's plan of conservation. The state plan of conservation and development, which, as I said in my memo, is their equivalent of your plan of development. The state has to do it every 5 years. And what it is, it's the state's way of telling the state how development should take place in Connecticut going forward. State departments are not allowed to do anything that's in violation of the state plan, just like in Newington. The Planning and Zoning Commission is not allowed to do anything that's in violation of your plan of development. There was a hearing on it the other day. I don't know what the results were, but this 5-year plan made very few changes. The previous 5-year plan was rather dramatic, made a bunch of changes. This one, not really.
Okay.
So that's just for your information.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, that's the planner's report. You get communications. Are there any communications from the commissioners? You have no other communications?
No.
Okay, next item is public participation. Anyone wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, remarks by commissioners at this point? I have no closing remarks. A motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.